Welcome to Real Estate Real World, where we talk to the movers, shakers, and leaders that are getting it done right now in the real estate industry and beyond. Your host, Marguerite Crispello, started this podcast simply dedicated to call people about what's really happening in this crazy roller coaster ride of real estate. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and stay up to date on the newest stuff by adding yourself to the list at www.realestaterealworld.com. Now your host, Marguerite Crispello.
Hello, everybody. It's Marguerite Crispello, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Real World, where we get to talk to all the cool people, all my favorite people on the planet. I started this podcast years ago simply with that idea to talk to people that interested me and I was fascinated with. And our special guest today is no doubt one of my favorite people that I met about 6.5 years ago at an industry event, and we immediately clicked and had such a great time. And I've enjoyed spending time with her at a variety of events and getting to know her personally and professionally. And she's such a rock star in all areas. So please help me, everybody, in welcoming my good friend, Lesley Hodge Perreault.
Thanks for having me on this morning.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How have you been?
Good. I've been good. I've been excited. I know we've had to push this back a couple times because I've had this laryngitis issue, but it doesn't seem to be going away. So I said, forget it. I'm just going to go with it. So I have this raspy, sexy voice that sounds like I've been a smoker for 30 years and I've never smoked a day in my life. So here we go. But I'm glad you're here. How are you?
I've been really good. We've been really busy. It's the same as what a lot of markets are seeing at low inventory and lots of business still happening, even though the rates have been a little higher.
Yeah, it's funny because you've been around a while. How long have you been in real estate now?
This is my 21st year.
Yeah, and this is in December, it'll be 30 years for me. And you know, what I love about some of us OGs who've been around for a while is that changing markets don't seem to faze us too much. It's like, it just is what it is, right?
I read something the other day, and so you just basically change your strategy. And that's more or less what it is. It's like you don't change businesses. You just change how you're attacking the one that you're in.
Oh, I love that. And it's funny because we decided the topic for today's conversation would be pick your poison, right? And we were laughing because you were just saying pick whatever you want to talk about. And it ties into a lot of what we were just talking about, how you just have to pick a different strategy. So tell me a little bit about how you have picked strategies over the years. Have they just fallen into your lap? Have you been like, are you a researcher? What works for you?
So when I first started my business, I was 24 and I didn't really have any friends that were buying at the time or enough that it would have made a business out of it at that point. So I started with expireds and for sale by owners, and I didn't even know that was a thing. Nobody had told me that, but I was just like, hey, I'm a genius. There's these houses that have been listed and they haven't sold, and I should call them because they wanted to sell. And so that was how I started. And I was pretty consistent with that. I had a lady this was before I knew anything about short sales too. So that's a whole nother topic. But
Oh, yeah.
She had 8 properties. I called her on a Sunday morning. They were expired. And she had me come out to her house and I listed all 8. And at that time I was like, there's no way that I'm going to sell these, because what she owed for one was basically the cost of the block. And
oh my God,
they were in the hood a little bit and it was just what it was. And so I went out and listed them and I thought, I'm just going to market the heck out of these and try to pick up investors and advertise a package deal. And again, just trying to think outside of the box on how to make something out of something that really probably wasn't ever going to happen. And I had a bank contact me and say, hey, we see that you're advertising this one property that's ours. Do you want it after we foreclose? And I was like, yeah. And that was before foreclosures were cool, if you want to call it that, for real estate agents. And so I started handling some of their foreclosures. They had sold off the bulk of their portfolio, and all they had left were these houses that basically were like $20,000 houses up by our university. And so I started working on that. I had a lender call me from Countrywide and say, hey, I want to know what it's going to take to earn your business. This has been a couple years after that. And I said,
Right.
I want all your foreclosures. Again, pre 08, 09. And she said, that's really weird. We actually had a sales meeting this morning. And in all the years that I've done this, nobody's asked me for that. And she'd been in the business a long time. And she said,
Wow.
I've also never sat in a meeting where they said, we need to find an agent that can help us with that. So I wound up with Countrywide's foreclosures, which a couple months later, Bank of America bought out. Bank of America was doing Deutsche Bank's foreclosures, the VA foreclosures, all sorts of different stuff. And so part of it has been intentional. Part of it has landed in my lap. It's one of those things that I always say that the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Absolutely.
So it just kept snowballing from there. I wound up doing a bunch of flips because I was learning the process vicariously through investors. And I was like, this is jacked up that I'm making $2,000 and they're making 20 some grand. And so I was like, I need to learn this. So that's elevated into a whole nother level of things. But lately I haven't had all the foreclosures. I mean, I think that went on until maybe like 2012.
Yeah, around 2013, 14 is when I wrapped it up with foreclosures. And I ended up, I had a similar situation with foreclosures. I didn't even know really what they were. And I had a friend of mine call me from Wells Fargo at the time. And he said, hey, they're asking me for a list of agents to put on this REO list. I'm like, what's an REO? And I procrastinated on filling out the paperwork because I didn't even think about it. And he literally calls me one day. He says, Marguerite, I really need you to fill out that paperwork. I'm like, so I finished it. And the next day they handed me five properties. I was like, oh, I guess I should take this a little more serious. And it was a similar thing. It just happened to be a friend of mine that I'd been working with. And next thing you know, I'm getting a ton of REOs. But I was also doing a lot of BPOs back then. And nobody wanted to do BPOs because they were $50. And probably like you, nobody wanted a $20,000 REO. They're thinking they're not going to make any money on it. And when you just keep hustling like that, then things seem to fall in your lap.
Yeah, I had some BPO experience and that was totally a fluke and it dropped in my lap. I was sitting on floor duty call, which we don't have anymore. And I was sitting there as a new agent and the company had called in and actually asked for a different agent and she had just passed away from cancer. And
Oh,
so they're like, Kathy has passed away, but we've got Lesley and she's happy to help you. Let me transfer the call. And I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about, but fake it till you make it. And I wrote down everything that they told me that I needed to do. And I was like, okay, I'm competent. I can go do this. I can figure it out. So it goes back to what you've always said is your income is directly related to being able to figure things out.
yep. I have
That's
shirts
what,
now. I have t-shirts made
that's
now with that on it. That's funny because same thing. There was a company back, I think they're still around, called Mark to Market. And they were a new BPO company at the time. And they were on East Coast time. So my kids were little. So I would put my kids to bed at 9 o'clock and I would sit up until 1 or 2 in the morning doing BPOs. And I would email back and forth with this guy and this gal who owned Mark to Market back then. And they would walk me through how to do PPOs and how to fix my mistakes and learn. And I ended up building a business where we were doing 400 to 500 BPOs a month, which I was paying milk money for my kids. You do what you got to do. Well, now, so we had this crazy wild ride with the COVID whole thing, right? Where the market was nutty. And then we went through, I don't know about your market because you're in Kansas, Wichita. And in our market, we saw a lull between when the rates popped up between like October and really till about February, where everything somewhat came to a halt a little bit. But now things are starting to like psych back up. Like things are starting to go crazy again. What are you seeing in your market?
we didn't have that long of a lull. It was almost like a couple of weeks and then people were just back at it.
Yeah.
And I think what they were starting to understand is even though the rate was more, they were trying to jump in where they weren't having to be in all these bidding wars at
Right.
that point. And now we're back to that. It's been nuts. Like our average sales price is around 2.25 in our market. And so even the higher priced stuff, I had somebody that wanted to make an offer on a $935,000 house. And we were going back to look at it for the second time. These buyers were in from out of town. The other agent knew that. She told another showing that we were coming back. They offered 950 cash. So they offered 15 grand over asking without even, we didn't even have another offer in yet. They were planning on doing one. I just had another one that they popped the price out on the market at 500 and my buyers offered 543 cash. We didn't know that there was any other offers on the table, but I told them we wanted a response by noon the next day. We didn't get it. I don't know what it sold for since it hasn't closed out yet, but it's just they had 7 or 8 other offers on that property. So it doesn't even seem to matter the price point. We're still seeing multiple offers and things going over asking, and mostly cash and conventional buyers.
So tell me this about, I guess it's been I don't know how long it's been now, but you've made a conscious decision when we're talking about pick your poison. You made a conscious decision to shift your marketing a bit more to more social media. And you started doing daily videos, which I love, by the way, some of the stories you tell. What made you decide to move to that direction, and how has that worked out for you? Are you actually getting business from it? And what is it you're doing? I know we had you as a guest on our Tuesday tune-ups a couple of weeks ago. For any of you guys who don't know what Tuesday tune-ups are, you can follow me at margueritecrospillo.com. And every week on Tuesday, we do free training for anybody in any industry. So you're always welcome to pop on. And we did a great one with Lesley, which we'll post the link to here.
So it was almost a year ago, a little bit before that, I would say March of last year. And I was at a Tom Ferry event. And the speaker that was up on stage was Glendabaker out of Atlanta. And she's created this huge TikTok following. And she was talking about video and how important it was and how it's changed her business. And initially in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to make a bunch of stupid videos and like dance and all this other stuff that I was seeing. And so I was like, I'm going to watch some of her stuff and see what she's doing. But the thing that I think really changed it in my mind was her concept of coming on and batch recording everything for the month in one slot. And that to me made it seem more manageable. So while I was sitting there, my coach tells me he's been calling me the executioner. I told him it needs to be like the implementer because that just doesn't sound very good. But we were sitting there side by side in Vegas, and I said, I'm going to do this. And I'm texting a videographer that I knew here in town. And I'm like, hey, I want to make 30 videos. And I've got some other things that I want to work on just to send out to our clients, like weekly, to update them on the process of being under contracts, whether that's buying or selling. And so I said, Troy, I want to make 30 videos. I said, how much would you charge me for that? And he was like $1,000. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. When can we do this? And so we scheduled the time immediately. Then I started doing it. I was super nervous the first time. And I thought that they turned out pretty good. And so right after Facebook started, or I started doing reels on Facebook, Facebook started monetizing them. And so they sent me a message. I really thought I was going to be hacked. They sent me something and they're like, hey, we need basically a 1099. And I'm like, I messaged a couple of other people that I thought had a big social media presence. And I'm like, hey, have you got this yet? No. I'm like, I'm going to try it. And so I submitted all the stuff into them. And the first month they paid me $500. And I thought, Troy's $1,000. I wonder if I put 2 videos out, if I can recoup my money for Troy. And it went from there. So I started out, when I first started April of last year, I had 1,700 followers. And then a couple days ago, I just hit 48,000 followers.
Wow.
So it's just been this gradual progression. I've had people message me for different tips, for different advice. My very first deal that I got out of it, the lady had messaged me and said, hey, I'm going to buy my friend's house. She's passed away. Her kids are going to sell it to me. I just need financing. Who would you recommend? So I sent them to my lender. Come to find out, she couldn't finance it unless she sold the house she owned. I wound up on the listing on that. I went to her housewarming party and I met the 2 boys that were the sons of the friend. And they had another house of hers that they needed to sell. So I sold it, got introduced to another couple that was there that we've been in talks about selling their house that's on some land west of Wichita. It's funny. It's just a numbers game. So the more people you can be in front of, the more the odds are that you're going to have something. Like I've got another 2 deals pending right now. The thing that's really opened my eyes about it that I didn't expect is I'm getting about 2 referrals a week. from agents in other markets.
Oh,
Sending
wow.
people in and out of the big city of Wichita. I never would have thought that. I could see Vegas or Orlando or Dallas, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then it's just progressed from there. So that's even something that I'm focusing on even harder, knowing what this is generating.
And what's interesting is people are always, and I'm include myself in this comment, they're hesitant to do video, right?
Sure.
I feel like I get a little stumped and overwhelmed. What am I going to say? I don't know what I'm going to do. I overthink it, right?
Yeah.
So how do you come up with topics and ideas of things to record?
Obviously, a year into this and 60 videos a month, the first part was really easy because it was just normal stories that always come up in conversation and stuff, things that I remember getting started and what we're doing. But now what it is, if I have a buyer ask a question or a seller ask a question, I write it down. If my team asks me a question or they have a story, then I write it down. The other thing that I've been working on in the last couple of months is I've set up Google alerts. So you can type in keywords. So I've got real estate, realtor, Wichita, Kansas. So anything that's written with those keywords in it, every day I get an email into my Gmail, and here's the articles that I can sit and research and maybe have a discussion about on a reel. So it's more reading, watching other videos, ripping off and duplicating other people's content to some level. I might have a different opinion about it, but it's at least a topic that I can come up with. So I've always got either a notepad where I've been jotting down ideas, or a lot of times I wind up texting myself. If I'm driving, like we were driving back from Oklahoma and I had a couple hour drive a few weeks ago, I just turned on voice record and I just started recording like a lot of different things. It's like, what are the tools that you need as a real estate agent? Like physical tools, like tape measures and different things like that, screwdriver, there's all sorts of randomness. And so I was just sitting there verbally jotting down ideas. So it's just something that I think the more you do of it, like anything, the more your brain's warmed up to it. And I think the more you do video, you just get more comfortable. I was talking to my agents about it and I'm like, how nervous were you when you went and showed your very first client house, just opening a door and meeting them? And they're like petrified, basically. And that's how video is. And now you just go open the door and it's something that you do every day and it's not that big of a deal. And so for me to be on video, it's become very commonplace at this point.
You know, it's funny because what I was thinking about when you're talking about the lockboxes, how many lockbox experiences have you had over the years? I started thinking about that because we had an agent, a brand new agent who went to show a house, and I don't know what kind of lockboxes you guys have, but we have the Supra lockboxes, right? And on the Supra, you can set a CBS code, which is basically like a secret code so that not every agent can access it. And so not even thinking about it, one of my agents gets out to show a property and she's like, it needs what's a CBS code? Is that like a secret, like password? Like, how do I get that code? And I'm thinking it's automatic to me because I've known it for many years, but it's not automatic. Even how to open a lockbox is not automatic. Right. And then I always laugh when I'm showing property because I'm like, it's like an Easter egg hunt every time you go to show a house.
That's exactly the term that I use.
And you're like, where's the lockbox now? And one of the funniest stories was a good friend of mine, Warren, who does a ton of REOs. And I'm going to have to tag him in this video because he has an REO that's way in the boonies. It's like an hour drive, like down dirt roads in the middle of nowhere. I get all the way out there, no cell service, right? So thankfully I had updated my lockbox key before I get there. And I get there and it has this, and it's a beat up old house. It has this gorgeous views, but it has this huge deck around it. And there's caution tape in front of the deck that says, do not go on the deck. And the lockbox is on the other side of the caution tape. And I'm like, so wait a minute. I'm not supposed to walk on the deck, but the lockbox is on the other side. I have to walk on the deck to get to the lockbox. So I sent him pictures of it and as a joke, and I'm pretty sure he fixed it. I don't know. It's been a long time, but it's always an Easter egg hunt. You never know where the dang lockboxes are going to be.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, some of the stuff that we take for granted of knowing. And then now the more that I've been working on coaching newer agents and things like that, like I had one of my agents call and she goes, okay, we just finished the home inspection and I have a question. I'm like, what's the question? And she says, there's water stains on the deck. And the inspector thought that was a big deal. And I'm like, why would that be a big deal? It's an outdoor deck. It's going to be in the water when it rains. And I'm like, can you read to me the report? Like where it mentions that? It was decking. It was the roof decking. But she didn't know what
Oh,
roof decking was. So every time he said decking, she's thinking it's the outside deck. And I was like, oh my God, they don't teach us any of this stuff. They don't teach
no,
you any building. They don't teach you any marketing. They don't teach you anything. It's
no.
just congratulations, you got a license, go do whatever, which is most people nothing because they don't know where to start.
Exactly.
It's like drinking from a fire hydrant. So I've had to really think about it. We've actually went and done field trips out to houses of different ages and be like, this is an issue on houses at this age with asbestos tape and with blah, blah, blah. This is masonite siding on this age. And so they have to understand a lot of different things, I think, in order to feel confident, because you have to be confident in order to be, well, competent in order to be confident.
Absolutely. And so that brings up an interesting topic because I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, an agent who's been 18 years in the business, and she had an agent who wanted to work with her but felt like the split or something was too high. And I was like, people don't understand the value of experience and what that experience looks like. And you just brought that hot topic up. It's masters make things look easy. Just like you said, with you now, video is like nothing to you because you've been doing it for a while. And masters make things look easy. So as real estate agents, especially experienced agents, we make things look so easy that a new agent thinks it doesn't take anything to be a real estate agent. And
Right.
so as new agents, they have to understand all those little tiny micro bits of knowledge and experience that you've gained from being in the business all these years. What do you tell your brand new agents?
We were talking about, I have an agent that's actually experienced. She just relocated here from Colorado. And she called, she says, I was just looking at EXP. I was actually going to talk to another agent in California about joining EXP, and I wanted some information. And she told me that she could talk to me in a day and a half. And she says, I'm the type of person that I don't want to wait a day and a half for anything. If I'm asking, I wanted the answer 5 minutes ago. And I love that personality type because I very much
Yeah.
relate to that. And so she just went to EXP's website and she's typing in Kansas because she just relocated here. And she's scrolling and she says, I don't know what it was, but I clicked on your picture and I thought I'm just going to call her and I'm going to see if she'll answer the phone and talk to me about it. And so I wound up on the phone with her for 30, 40 minutes. And I told her, I said, this is the deal with EXP as a solo agent. This is what I do. I do have a team. If that's anything that you would be interested in discussing, I know you're experienced, but you're not here. And she says, no, I have no desire to be on a team. And I said, I understand. I said, because I was 100% the exact same way. Now I jokingly, not so jokingly say, if I could find a team that does everything that I'm doing for them, I would join the team.
Yeah.
And I told her that on the phone. And so she hung up. We were going to just get together and talk EXP solo agent another day. And she called me the next week and she says, I want to sit down and meet with you about your team. Okay. And then she joins the team, or she's in the process of joining right now. And the funny thing is, long story long, is she was talking to her husband and he says, the whole reason that you wanted to leave Remax was because you didn't like the desk fee. So it's like a couple $100. And then now all of a sudden, Lesley is having you join her team and you're giving away 50% of your income. She says she's doing everything that I want in my business. And so I'm going to go and I'm going to get educated and then I'm going to do it. And I said, it's like a slingshot. I said, I'm pulling you back for a second financially, but as soon as you let go, I said, you're just going to spring forward where all these other agents that don't want to invest in themselves, and that's how I feel like this is, then they're the ones that are going to remain the most stagnant because they're not
I
learning.
think that's brilliant because I've had a couple good friends of mine, including my business partner, Mitzi, who relocated to Columbia, Tennessee. And I think that we all, including myself, thought she'll be able to just go there and just be up and running in a short period of time. And of course, it's not. It's a different market. It's different people. It's different styles. It's different ways of doing things. And she's doing great out there. She's starting to pick up, but it wasn't an overnight thing. And another friend of mine moved to Florida, same thing, thinking that, oh, I've got 20 years experience, it'll be no big deal. But it's different. And when you get dropped into this like nowhere land where you don't know anybody, know anything, or know you have the experience of real estate, but it's still a different market, there's a ton of value in, and even for new and newer agents and experienced agents, there's a ton of value in just the conversations that someone like you and I have is on a whole different level than somebody who is brand new or newer or new to that area. There's so much value in that. And I think that as agents, we don't give enough value to ourselves for, the years of experience and the years of knowledge and the years of figuring it out when you didn't know what to do.
I think even though there's something to be said about surviving and thriving as at 20 years or at the 30-year mark in the business, but there's always, I think, so I took a couple of years off in the middle. It was just like I was really burnt out from doing all the REOs. I hated people. Like it's a mean business. It can be. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm going to have to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And that was like 7 years ago. And so when I came back in, it was nice to have a whole fresh perspective and a reevaluation, and to have David's perspective, who had never been in real estate. He's pointing out things that our consumers, they don't know that typically a seller pays you and that commission's negotiated in on the listing and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, they do. And he goes, no, they don't. So the next lead that we went out and David said, let me ask you a couple questions. Are you familiar with this? Are you familiar with that? And we got in the car and David's like, I told you. I said, you know what? Here's what they need to know. They don't know anything and I do. And they just need to know that they need me. And he's like, Lesley, that is not how this works. What are you talking about? And I look at it and if I could have been in, like, your class was super impactful, that you were talking about how you do all of your follow-ups with your past clients and all that. Nobody taught me that 20 years ago. There's so many things I look back on and I was like, I was so stupid. And it's not dumb. I'm not a dumb person, but I just was ignorant to the fact of what everybody else did. And I wouldn't pay for training and go anywhere. I'm like, I'm already the top agent at my branch and I'm already this and that. Who the hell is going to teach me something better? I was so stupid and narrow-minded that now I look at it and I'm like, there's so much stuff that I've gleaned from you and like Wendy Foreman. God, there's a whole group of us at EXP that I'm just like, I've learned so much in 7 years that it's like a whole different business. It doesn't even resemble the business that I had 20 years ago or 15 years ago.
I love your husband. And I love even the videos that you guys did where people were asking him questions about you, or you guys were asking him questions about you. Those are hilarious. I love those. But you bring up a good topic. And as we wrap up today, I want to address this because I created 25 years ago a client discussion checklist. And I swear to you, it's one of the most impactful things that I've done. And frankly, it has not changed in 25 years. And it's literally a checklist of all the mistakes that I have made in conversations and in assuming that the consumer knew, right? Like a good one is earnest money deposit, right? So we don't even think about the earnest money deposit. We're like, oh yeah, you have to put a deposit down. I had a VA buyer who was doing a VA no loan, which is no money down, no closing costs, right? So we get the contract all prepared. I'm like, okay, you're going to need to put your earnest money deposit. He goes, oh no, I don't need to do that. No, I go, actually, you still do have to put an earnest money deposit down. And here's why, and here's how it works. And we argued and argued over it. And he was convinced that he did not need to put an earnest money deposit down. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to add that to my list of things that I need to talk to people about up front. And if you guys are interested in that, just shoot me a PM or a DM and I'll send you a copy of my client discussion checklist. And I need to do a training on that on Tuesday.
That's your next book.
Oh, there you go. That's my next book.
You don't know what you don't know. Here.
They have a lot of times with new agents, the mentors will say, just ask me questions when you have them. And they're like, they don't even know what they don't know. They don't know what questions to ask.
That's how I started the team, because I hate meetings. And I sure as hell didn't want to set myself up for having to have a weekly meeting or anything. I was just like, just call me. And I told him up front, I'm not the motherly type. I will not call you and be like, how's my baby today? I don't even do that to my own kid. It's like, that is not my personality. And so I'm like, if you need me, you call me and I will answer whatever you need. I'm not saying I wasn't getting some phone calls, but we started doing weekly meetings in January, and I've been tracking the numbers since then, and our numbers have doubled in our sales numbers because they didn't know. They don't even know what to ask. And it was like the other day, REO kind of came back up, and it was like somebody was asking what redemption rights were. And I was like, okay, we need to have a whole REO training because some of these agents are 2 and 3 years in the business, but we didn't have foreclosures because of COVID. So they have regular real estate experience, but now here's this whole new layer onto their layer cake. And they're just like, what in the heck is this? So it's constantly learning. And and me too, constantly learning how to be a better leader or just to be a leader. I've never ran a business. I've never had agents or a team or whatever. So it's just constantly trying to figure out how to improve the process.
It's been a ton of fun watching your progress over the last, I think it's been almost 7 years since I've known you, because it was pretty early on in 2017. I think we met, so 6 years or so.
Yep.
And it's been really fun to watch your progress and your growth. And I'm super proud of you and honored to be a friend of yours. And I only wish we'd have gotten a chance to take those Hummers across the country. But funny story, Lesley and I both signed up for the GMC Hummer when they came out, the registration. And then it was 2 years later when we finally got them. And I got mine here in California. She got hers, but in Kansas, they're not quite electric vehicle friendly out there.
No, I would say Midwest, because we were having issues in Missouri and Oklahoma and Kansas. So it's just like, if it was around town, great.
Yeah. Because I
could charge it at home. But yeah, road trip. And then when we were talking about, I'm like, we have to go out and see Marguerite. And David's like, are you freaking kidding me? Going up through, I'm trying to think of how our path would have wound up, like where we would have had to travel to, but through Dakotas or whatever. You know that they're not electric.
Exactly. You're not going to find any electric vehicle stations. I know. I haven't taken mine on any long road trips yet. So it's great for around here, but yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today, Lesley. We'll be definitely posting all of her social media stuff in the show notes. So be sure and follow her. And thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I can't wait to see you soon, hopefully.
Yes. Thanks for having me. And I look forward to seeing you and Joe soon.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on Real Estate Real World, where we get to talk to all the cool people. Be sure and follow us on YouTube and head on over to realestaterealworld.com and add your name to our list to make sure you get the first updates on new guests that are joining us. So thank you again, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you for joining us today on Real Estate Real World, where we talk with masters and leaders in real estate and beyond on how we can raise the bar in our industry. Please subscribe over on iTunes. And while you're there, be sure to give us a review. Your reviews encourage us and help others find our podcast. For show notes and hot topics on what's going on right now in our real estate industry, hop on over to www.realestaterealworld.com and add your name to our email. Thanks again for listening. And go out there, be a part of the elite masterclass in raising the bar on the real estate industry.